Welcome and good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock and time to get started with our learning here today. My name is Randy Lober, Growth Marketing Manager here at Action Benefits, and pleased to welcome you along for this morning sessions where we'll help the poor child on the screen figure out whether she's got to eat her vegetables or whether something else might be coming, just like the same way your clients might be feeling about another med sup renewal that sees another 14, 15% increase, 90% increase, whatever the case might be. Happy to lead the majority of today's conversation with and for you here today, but joining me today also is Chelsea Gomez, our Learning and Development Specialist. Chelsea, go ahead and say hi to the people.
Everyone, thank you for spending some time here with us today to figure out, when is the great time to start taking a look at other options for your med sup renewals instead of just kind of doing the status quo. Put any questions that you have down in the chat and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thank you for coming.
And thank you for joining us here, Chelsea, and thank you all for joining us here today as well. Before we get started, just to level set, we probably won't cover any earth-shattering ground, but what I find is helpful and what agents have told me is helpful in sessions like these is it's sometimes nice to hold kind of a mirror to your own thinking about how you're approaching these renewals. And, sometimes when you hear something from someone else's face, you go, huh, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that in a while, or that slipped my mind, right? So that's the goal of today's session. But to help set the mood, if you will, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand button. I'd like you to click that raise hand button if you've reviewed a MedSup increase with any of your clients and heard anything that sounds like this. Why is this getting so expensive? I don't know if I can afford this. Or isn't there anything we or you, their agent, can do? Use that raise hand feature and let me know, have you heard any of this recently or ever?
I hear it from my own family members, and I'm not their
Okay,
agent.
now. Right. Yep. Yeah, and you're all there. The vast majority of you have used that raise hand feature so far, and if you haven't yet, don't feel shy. Your other agents in the room here have been in that boat here just as well. We've all, your clients are feeling that strain of that 15, 18%, and they're feeling it over the past 2, 3 years, right? Which I'm not a math major, but it adds up to a lot. So what we want to accomplish today is look at a quick crash course in the why of how much of recent med sup increases. Then we'll sort through a few questions to help determine if your client's best is suited to stay in that high premium, high cost plan, or if something else might be an appropriate and suitable replacement. And then we'll put those questions to work with a few scenarios. Chelsea and I are going to put a few sample clients in front of your faces and give you a chance to think about what might make sense for them. So this is very much not just the Randy and Chelsea show. You hold a supporting role in the script in today's session, and we invite you to do so. So let's talk about what's up with MedSups. And big hint, it's the rates lately. If you've been in any MedSup at A, F, G, N, B, C, D, K, L, M, all of them, nothing is going down lately, right? But I know the bulk of it, what you're writing is a Plan G and a Plan N, so let's take a look at that. Figures on your screen came from Talos Interactual. These are quarter 2 rates year over year. So quarter 2 rates from 2025 compared to quarter 2 filings in 2026. And these are indeed aggregate across the carriers you see represented on the screen here. So this is all of the Aetna Med subs available throughout the country. Every BCBS, so not just Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, but every BCBS plan offered throughout the country. Every Cigna, every Humana, every Mutual of Omaha, or Moo, every UHC, and every other filing that we can round up. And what you are no doubt seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, no matter the carrier in 2025 and in 2026, you are seeing both a little bit of a raise, from 2024 to 25, but that 2025 to 26 premium is a doozy for your Plan Gs. And that is unless you are in an Aetna plan, which stayed relatively flat in the 17%, or you're in a Mutual of Omaha, which might have actually come down from about 22.5% to 21%. So Plan G is going up, and we'll get to why in just a moment. Let's also take a look at Plan N rate histories because you're probably writing a good portion of that as well. Plan N, you're seeing similar increase, or similar patterns, though not as intense, right? You're not seeing the same 21, 22% increases. All these bars come down a little bit lower. But if we were to look at overall trend through Aetna, BCBS, Cigna, Humana, Moo, UHC, or other, you're seeing similar trends, right? Where in the past 2 years, whether it's a Plan G or a Plan N, rates are going through the relative roof, better than 10, but sometimes better than 12% or 15% in most cases. Why that's happening in a nutshell is when we take a look at this graph along with this explanation, kind of puts it all together. When we look at new issue business, so business issued within the last 3 years, we're seeing that about 71% of all new med subs throughout the nation fall in a Plan G. And well, because almost everyone is in it and everyone's using it, we all know and appreciate the rich benefits in a Plan G. That increases those medical loss ratios on the Plan Gs. And so the premiums have to rise to cover them, right? That's how insurance works. On a Plan N, right, which is essentially a Plan G without the coverage for excess charges. So you've got much fewer people in it, but they're also using it because it's a fairly rich plan. And again, when you use plans or when the risk pool uses the benefits within the plan, premiums have to raise to compensate. Looking at Plan F, and you're not writing a lot of Plan Fs because these are folks who were eligible for Medicare before January 1st, 2020, but there is about 12% of new business still written into Plan Fs via plan changes or so on and so forth. And again, first dollar coverage, really rich benefits. There's no deductible for them to look at there. So Plan F premiums, if you still got those in your on the books, also going up. And high deductible Gs plus everything else kind of makes up the last 2% of the pie here, though HDG makes up the largest fraction of that 2%. Rates there are relatively steady, all things considered. Why? Well, there's a smaller enrollment, so smaller risk pool. There's less carrier exposure, right? Because you've got that $29.50 deductible that kicks in before the carrier has to pay anything. And that leads to more stable rates, not necessarily decreases, but it leads to 5, 6, 7, 8% increases, not 15, 20, 25% increases like you'd see on your Plan N or Plan Gs. So really, this is the law of large numbers at work, except the numbers that are going up, as I'm sure you've heard, are claims. As claims increase, premiums to have to adjust to pay for those claims. So that is really what we're seeing happen throughout the market, no matter what carrier, no matter what state you're working in. Chelsea, anything to add there, or is that a big thumbs up
It's
from
pretty much the
the
same as every other, Medicare plan thing we're looking at here, right? This is not probably new information for any of the agents that we have here. But it's reflecting what is happening across all of Medicare, right? So even if you're working with Med Advantage, you're seeing something like this going on. And dare I say, maybe even with some of the ancillary products you're quoting for some of your clients, that the increases might be reflected there too. Oh, we got a question. Is it the number of claims or more of the cost of the claims going up or a mix? Both.
Yes, that's an
Both.
inclusive yes. I think at least, yeah. In that certainly we have an older population that generally as we age, we file more claims, whether it's for an ouchie ooey arthritis or the big deal stuff, right? And indeed, the cost of claims are going up as well as we see cancer diagnoses or multiple chronic conditions that really could, waylay you for a few days. So both the number and intensity of claims are both increasing, and both of them put massive upward pressure on premiums.
And the number of people who are getting into these plans in the first place, right? There's more
Right.
seniors now than there ever was, and ever has been, and ever will. Not will be because it's going to go up again next year too, I guarantee.
Yeah, but certainly we're seeing this is the kind of the effects of an aging population, right? Where they're all aging into these Medicare products, they're all buying into these Medicare products, and when you get older, you use more care and often require more intense care. So it's kind of a perfect storm of things that are driving these rates upward? Excellent question. So the key questions then we have, or you might have as a broker in trying to decide what do I do with this? Do I just tell them to eat their vegetables like the poor girl here at the table? Or do we ask them to maybe see if we can whip something else up in the kitchen for them real quick? And what are the decision points like we have to go through before we even can, look through our recipe book and see what else is available? So the first question that is probably important to ask is there an issue at all, right? So as we take a look at individual clients, and I would highly stress that as we'll stress throughout the examples we go through today, that this is very much an individual decision. We are by no means suggesting that all of your Plan G clients should change plans. To save cash, this is a very much a case-by-case margin or case-by-case basis, and the decision is really made in the margins and where that break-even point happens to be. At any rate, first thing we want to know is where does the client stand right here, right now, in this moment? What's the current carrier, plan, and rating methodology? And rating methodology is important because it can tell us a little bit about what we might expect out of rates going forward. Also want to know about their current annual monthly premium, of course, to figure out whether there's anything we have to do here. And we also want to know a little bit about how does the client feel about the last few years' increases. Some clients, right, generally you buy into MedSup because you're a person of means who prefers that premium certainty. You like to pay for your care upfront via premium as opposed to copays and such and deductibles on the back end. So they might be fairly well off and see these last few increases, and it could be a relative drop in the bucket for them. This could be a person who bought into MedSup because they need that, they are on a fixed income, right? They need that premium certainty because they say, this is all the max I'm going to spend in a year. But gosh, now I'm paying 15%, 18%, 20% more year over year over year, and I don't feel good about this increase anymore. I don't know if I can do that, right? So even though the increase is the same, the 15, 18, 20, you've got two different spectrums of, two different sides of the spectrum of feelings that folks could have about it. They could either not care, they could either care very deeply about what they're going through here, or probably somewhere in the middle, honestly, for most folks.
Let me back up one quick second,
Yep.
Randy. One thing I thought of too while I was looking at these slides, right before we went on stage, is I'd like to challenge you, especially in the med sup world as an agent, to think about it from our client's perspective, because I've been hearing a lot from agents lately. Like, I don't really know how to get it through to my clients that some of these things, these levers we can pull are, you have to change your mindset around the way those levers can be pulled and what those levers are doing, right? With my own, I feel like I bring up this every webinar, with my own parents, they could not wrap their heads around that the plans were going to be the same regardless of what carrier they're choosing, right? They're standardized by the government, as we know. So our clients, I don't think completely always know that and understand that. And one of the levers you could pull to make these a little cheaper is maybe taking a look at a different carrier's flavor of Plan G or Plan N or High G, or if we ever hear about that Innovative G, things like that could be levers you could pull as well to get this a little cheaper, which is a totally something we're going to talk about earlier or later today. But another thing to think about, another thing to think about when you talk about these with your clients, because I know that my parents kept saying, "Oh, I love blue, I love blue." I understand, like, because that's what you've had for so long, but these plans are the same regardless of what carrier you go with.
It would be amazing if we could talk about it earlier, but I digress. Quick detour into rating methodologies, only because this matters if you work in other states that do have more variety in the rating methodologies that med-sub carriers use. From left to right, we have attained age rating, issue age rating, community rated rating. Attained age rating is probably what you're most familiar with in the med sub market because the vast majority of our partners use that rating methodology here, where the premium is based on the beneficiary's current age. And of course, they move up an age band and the premium increases, of course, as they age. There is also the rare carrier out there that bases the premium only on issue age, which means if you buy in at 67, whatever rate you got at 67 is the rate you have for life. And gosh, you'd be hard pressed to find those now, but they're still out there. It's still a possible rating methodology. I just don't know any available in Michigan for that matter. On the right side, you see community rated, and community rating works just like it does in the small group or the ACA markets, where the premium is based on where the beneficiary lives and some other factors as well. Now, why is that important? Well, it's because we see both sides of the spectrum represented here in Michigan. The vast majority of our carrier partners do use attained age rating, meaning every year you get older, there's a little bit more baked into the premium. UHC technically does use community rated rating in their rate grid, but what they do is essentially start everyone at their 81-year-old rate and give you a 3% discount for every year you are under that. So it ends up looks like, sounds like, feels like, smells like attained age rating because you lose a portion of that discount every year you age. But under the hood, it is in fact a community rated plan. The more you know, I guess. Second thing we need to look at, and probably the first gate we need to clear, is what changes may be available. Is a change even on the table if we have this discussion? So we'll want to know, first of all, has anything changed with your client's health since they enrolled, right? They could have got that med sup fresh when they were 65, fit as a fiddle, spry as a spring chicken, and maybe now they're 72, 73, and there's a new diagnosis or several diagnoses that have piled up that may make it more difficult to get through underwriting for a plan switch. That's an important question to ask. The other thing to think about is, do they expect any life changes within the next year or so? In other words, do they plan to move? Might they plan to move out of state, which would change their eligibility for their current plan? And if so, does that change when we have this renewal kind of conversation or this plan adjustment session? If they're planning to move in the next 3 months, past or the next 6 months or whatever, it may be better to revisit the conversation then, when they may have more options available to them. Have they had any major medical diagnoses and how long ago? This sounds like the first question, but little different angle on it. And the reason why is, for many carriers, they have look backs on how far they'll look back for underwriting. Some carriers have a 2-year look back. Some carriers go all the way up to a 5-year look back on cases. So if we have, for example, a cancer that's been in remission for 1 year, probably going to be knocked out of underwriting for the vast majority of carriers. But if it's been in remission for 2 years, I've got a few more carriers open to me now. It's been in remission for 3 years, more, 4, even more, and 5. I've got almost everyone open to me now if we're looking for a plan switch, if that's the only health factor that would impact underwriting. So how long ago you had the diagnosis can all be as important as the diagnosis you have right now. And lastly, does the client qualify for any special situation? So a federal guaranteed issue right, meaning they've lost employer group coverage, and that's going to open them up for a plan change or something of the sort. Is there state guaranteed issue? Some states, let's lump some states' statements all together here. Some states do have their own guaranteed issue rights for plan changes within those borders. Some states also have birthday rules and anniversary rules, which give you essentially a Medigap open enrollment period each year. Not the case here in Michigan, though there is a Senate bill on the table to institute a birthday rule for us. So those might be options, especially if you work in other states. And also, might they be eligible for a carrier downgrade privilege? And what I mean by that is, looking at Priority Health, for example, they allow folks who are currently in a Medigap Plan C or a Medigap Plan F to drop down to a G or an N, or to downgrade, so to speak, without going through any underwriting as of their 2026 agent guidebook. So that's an important question here too. And should you have more questions about downgrade privileges, we're happy to dig into those. But that is an option, right? Where we could use the carrier's rules in the client's favor to move down to something else or move to a different plan without having to answer those medical questions again.
I had no idea that it existed before this we were going to give this webinar. I didn't know that was even an option. So that was really cool to find out. I had one more thing on the other slide too. The how have they had any major medical diagnoses and how long ago? Keep in mind too, because as I was looking at these slides, thinking about them, I went and pulled up a couple underwriting idea apps or some underwriting guidelines. Whew, if you look at that list of all the stuff, there's a lot of stuff on those lists. There's a lot of things that could potentially keep your clients either in place, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, not earlier, later. But there's a lot of things on those lists, right? Keep in mind the asterisk or caveat on a lot of that stuff is whether or not it is controlled, right? So you can have that diagnosis, but if it's a controlled diagnosis, it might not affect the underwriting at all. So keep that in mind too. Don't let the list scare you.
Right. A good example of that is asthma, right? If asthma is well controlled, there's been no hospitalizations for it, generally won't impact underwriting as far as where they get placed on the rate tier. So I skipped ahead to the bottom right box here for those of you following along at home. But if asthma is uncontrolled, if I've been in the hospital every week with an asthma attack, that's uncontrolled. And that's probably represents a greater risk to the carrier, less likely to get through underwriting. In any case, this is by no means a one-size-fits-all guide, but generally speaking, the carriers we support will take a look at these conditions represented on the screen, and generally speaking, your client would be placed in their standard risk pool. So most carriers have preferred standard risk and substandard risk. These are ones that are likely going to land you right in the middle, where you're going to be paying a little bit more than someone who. Any of these conditions could be either substandard risk or could, in fact, end up in your client knocked out of coverage. So, due to underwriting. So, be aware of that going forward here as well. Third question we want to take a look at is, how does the math work? And this is the most important question. It's also the most sciencey and fun question to dig into. And there are a lot of ahas that Chelsea and I came through as we were authoring this session for you. So let's suppose that we have Diane, who is age 71. She lives in Southeast Michigan, just so we know the rating area here. Used her Medigap OEP to enroll in a Plan G from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Right now at 71, she's paying $218.97 per month, puts her annual premium at $2627.64 per month. And right now her claim exposure is limited to $0, of course, after she fulfills her Part B deductible. But what if she considered a Plan G, or Plan High Deductible G? If we looked at some other monthly premiums, right, for High Deductible G, on Blue Cross, you're looking at $105.43. On Wellaby, at their standard rate, so this is not their preferred, just to show you what's possible here, $58.26 per month. Humana, their preferred rate for H Deductible G for this age is $57.75. Their annual premiums you see here varied, and you also see the premium savings here. But we know on a high deductible G, of course, there's more out-of-pocket exposure, right? Your client may be on the hook for up to $29.50 in approved Part A and Part B costs. So the decision then becomes, what's the break-even point, right? And what could sway the math or the decision either way? So on that HDG from BCBSM, our break-even point's a little bit lower, right? $1362.48 in Part A, B expenses. Wellaby, you get a little bit more leeway, $1928.52. For Humana, a little bit less leeway, $1934.64 in Part A, B expenses. So if Diane is otherwise healthy, and we don't expect her to use a lot of care in the next year, or next several years, that HDG could be a good fit, right? She could end up with a few $100s, right? Assuming she does go to the doctor at some point, she could end up with several $100s back in her pocket as some savings. Knowing, of course, that her worst case scenario is, of course, that $29.50. On Plan N, though, the math changes a little bit, right? Honestly, not a lot of savings going from a G to an N with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, even if it's NGI here. But look at Wellaby standard rates or Humana's preferred rates. You see 125.14 or 151.64 for the same person. Puts the annual premiums at the numbers you see here and puts their premium savings at the numbers you see here as well. What's different though is that what the out-of-pocket exposure is. And on a plan N, it's not the big tickets that you're facing. It's that you get nickel and dime to death. There can be nickel and dime to death depending on how much you use care that year, right? So, of course, they have to pay their Part B deductible, but then $20 copay for an office visit, $50 copay for an ER visit, and then they may be liable for excess charges. So, if a doctor doesn't accept assignment, the full Medicare approved amount as payment in full for services, then the doctor can charge another 15% on top of that. However, 98% of providers, these are according to CMS figures, do accept assignment because they like that Medicare money coming in to their practices. Meaning, excess charges, while it's not a non-zero risk that your clients will run into them, it is a smaller risk, and whether or not they want to take that risk is, of course, up to them. But the break-even point for those gets really interesting, right? If I go from a G to an N on a BCBSM, my break-even point is 8 office visits or 3 ER visits either way, right? If I make more than those, then if I use more care than either of those numbers, makes more sense to stay in my plan G. But to go to the Wellaby here, right, where I'm seeing that $1,100 in savings, I can buy essentially 56 office visits or 22 ER visits here, right? And assuming, of course, there's no excess charges here. So if I go to the doctor 57 times in a year, that makes it more sense for me to stay on the plan G. Or if I plan to go to the ER 23 times, makes more sense for me financially to just go to the plan G. Humana's Plan N has similar break-even points, right? Well, 40 office visits is the break-even point here, the 40 $20 copays or $16.50 $50 copays. If I get to either the 41st or 17th visit here, that's when it makes more sense for this person to stay on the plan G, right? Assuming she's healthy, can otherwise get through underwriting. And that math, that break-even point, is kind of one of the big things we'd like you to take away from here. If the client is otherwise healthy, can get through underwriting, there's some real savings to be had when we shop around. But I know there's a lot of you going, grumble, 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 and you are right to grumble. Here's your chance to do so. What are some good reasons to keep that client on their high cost, high premium plan going forward here? And I'd love for you to put some reasons in the chat for us here, please.
Man, if you're going to the doctor 56 times, obviously I understand like a mix and match between doctors and ER visits. It's not like you're exactly going 56 times. But man, if you're going that many times, maybe you should like, I don't know, get married to a doctor or become a doctor at that point to save yourself some money. Maybe it's a totally different conversation than something about your med sup plan at that point.
Yeah, there's definitely something underlying there. And some of the thoughts coming in is, of course, is if they can't get through underwriting, right? They've got some serious conditions going on, maybe something that is requiring you to go 56 times a year, or at least the better part of 30, right? Could be a good reason to stay put. And that's absolutely right. Well, the difference is in like all insurance products and advising clients with insurance products is how much risk are you willing to take on? That break-even point and doing some math is a really nice way to frame the risk and what you might be able to have to take on should you decide to make a plan change. Chelsea, I
I,
see you unmuted. What's up?
oh, I just thought of this as we were sitting here. Um, if another reason a person might not switch from their current cost plan, they might be under 65. That carrier that they like or the plans that are available might not be available to that person because that carrier just chooses to not, or maybe nothing in their area is available because they're under 65, right? Different rules if you're under 65 applying for a med sup plan because you have ESRD or one of those conditions that allows you to hop onto a med sup plan before you turn 65. Totally different, could be a totally different ball game in one of those scenarios.
Certainly. Absolutely. Excellent point. Few more questions, two more questions, in fact, that we'd want to ask our clients, and that is what resources does the client have on hand? And this kind of goes hand in hand with the point we just made about what risk are you willing to take on. And so if we think about the premium savings that we might get out of a move to a G or an N, the question is, could the client comfortably cover that deductible or your new out-of-pocket exposure, right? With your $20 and $50 copays on a plan N, could you comfortably do it if a bad year hit? And the answer is either yes or the answer is no. And that's going to point you in the direction of should I stay or should I go or should I stay, respectively. If they can comfortably cover that deductible and a high deductible G and the break even, the savings in that is helping them do so, that's a good indicator they could move, right? Or if they know themselves and they're notoriously a bad saver, right? They would see all that savings come to their bank account and they think it would go somewhere else, right? They wouldn't actually be able to cover that deductible because instead they're out buying hot tubs or vacations or whatever they might be doing. Then maybe it's a better idea to stay in the Plan G. But either way, that's the next question we want to ask is what resources do you have on hand to cover any new exposures you have? And speaking of covering those new exposures, we'd also want to think about whether we're going to cover any new or additional risks that are left open because of the plan switch. So, and I'm thinking particularly about a high deductible G here if the client decides to move that way, because the worry is hitting the deductible all at once. They're most likely to hit that deductible, all things considered, with a hospital stay of any kind of length. So if you were to build in a hospital indemnity plan with a minimum base benefit, and this is from Wellaby, by the way, but some extra, but we get that lump sum here, the lump sum confinement rider for $2,000 every time you enter the hospital for 2 payments per year. That helps me take care of the Part A deductible that they'd be responsible for on the HDG with some extra cushion if that Part A deductible should continue to increase over the next few years. Also added in an ambulance rider and lump sum cancer rider that you can certainly knock those out just as well. And the annual premium here is $940.08, right? So for this same person, you're still thinking about Diane, right? And if she were to go to high deductible G, depending on which high deductible G she goes to, she has still somewhere between $400 and $1,000 in wiggle room to hit her break-even point. Compared to if she were to just stay put on that Plan G. Let me prematurely advance the slide there. On a Plan N, the math changes a little bit, right? What a hospital indemnity plan does is protect you from the big expenses, like the big deductible being come at once. On a Plan N, probably a hospital indemnity plan doesn't do a lot for her. Because again, the Plan N is pretty much a copay plan after you hit that Part B deductible. She's being nickel and dimed for those copays. Other word, the hospital indemnity is probably not a good fit for clients that take the Plan N for that reason. Maureen asks about the specific Wellaby plan. Is there a waiting period for that lump sum confinement? No, there is not. So Wellaby's benefits trigger whether you're admitted for observation or as an inpatient, and they trigger the lump sum hospital confinement triggers the same time you have the core benefit trigger here as well. So you're getting that extra payout there right away. There are other hospital indemnity plans out there. I'm thinking like a GTL, who does require that the person remain in the hospital for at least 6 hours before benefits are triggered. So if they went in, so on that plan, if they were to go into the hospital with a chest pain, or whatnot, so a bona fide or reasonable person might see it as an emergency, but the doctor releases them, before that 6 hour hits, that particular plan wouldn't pay anything. So for that reason, Wellaby could be a real good fit for marrying you here with an HDG or with a Medicare Advantage plan for that matter as well.
Since we have Wellaby right in front of us, it is fun and cool to go through that quoting tool and adjust so many different things to come up with exactly a premium amount that would equate to less than whatever the savings are. So you're still getting a good chunk of savings for your client or maybe breaking even if that's what they're interested in. Lots of different things to play with there to get the number you want.
Yeah. And even then, again, they could even come out ahead here, right? Is over the next few years, if I get $2,000 and I give myself the cushion of two benefit periods that I could pay for, that's $4,000 in my pocket if I have a bad year. So actually coming out a little bit ahead, depending on how I write the policy, right? And uh, I mean, unfortunately, I had a bad year medically, but from a pure financial sense, that's all good news. Quick stop and job before we put some of these questions to the test. What else might you need to know before you enter a consultation with a client? Is there anything addition to these 5 questions you'd want to know about before you go forward and start uh, consulting with them? Go ahead and put a few questions in the chat, please, or responses in the chat, please.
I was thinking about this as well as we were going through. Um, don't think that this is just your thought process only for a client who's switching from one med sup to another. This is honestly a great exercise to do if you ever run into a situation where you have a client who had med advantages looking to switch to a med sup. Obviously, the math might be a little different, the formula is going to be a little different, but essentially the same thought process and the same mathematical stuff you're doing here to come up with that comparison, right? It's a break even point is what we're looking for at the end of the day.
Right. Just the break-even point is going to be vastly different depending on MOOPs and so on and so forth, and what the worst-case scenario might be. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to, with our last few moments here today, promise you 45 minutes, and we're going to hit 45 minutes here today. I want to walk you through 3 sample clients, get your feedback on how you might approach them going forward. Some quick disclaimers about the rates I'm about to show you to head off any any questions or, well, Randy and Chelsea said before we go forward. So all the rates you're about to see were generated from Sunfire on July 2nd of this year, and all the quotes you're going to see are for an 8/1 effective date. Sunfire's underwriting questions were used to rule carriers in or out. Sunfire does not show you specific carriers if it's unlikely that the client would get through that carrier's underwriting, so it will hide or show you carriers as appropriate. I do need to offer the strong caution, though, that final rates, rating tiers, and underwriting decisions do lie with the carrier. And what you may see on Sunfire may differ from what you see from the actual carrier when you go to put the app in. So take it with a healthy a little teaspoon of salt here going forward. That said, let's talk about a few scenarios. Let's talk about Jim, who is 73, lives in Wixon, Michigan, 48393, not a tobacco user. His underwriting situation, if we're thinking about the changes he could make, he's going to say no to any knockout questions. He's healthy as a horse, but it doesn't have any pending GI rates, no scheduled treatments or surgeries, and no major diagnoses, either forward or backward. He's 73. He's currently in a Health Alliance Plan G, paying $263 per month. Last year, he took a 15.9% rate hike, and he's coming to you saying, gosh, I wish there was a better way I could do this. We'll show you some of the math for a few plans on the right. I'm going to ask you to make a decision here. When we think about his resources at hand, he is living off his 401k and does want to preserve those. And whether or not we need to solve for any new exposure, well, that's kind of going to depend on where you put Jim going forward here, right? So let's show you some of the math here. If I look at his current Plan G from HAP, he's paying $263 a month, annual premium of $31.56, no savings for staying because he's staying put, no break-even point because he's staying put. If he looks at an HDG from Humana, monthly premium is $66.03. $792.36 is his annual premium. His savings over staying is $23.63.64. So his break-even point would be $23.63.64 in Part A or Part B expenses. And if you were to look at a Plan N from Humana, $154.33, $1851.96 is his annual premium. $13.04 is his savings. His break-even point is either 65 office visits, 26 ER visits, or if you do a sliding scale, somewhere in between those. Do we move him at all? Do we keep him? Do we keep him put? Does he stay put? And if he does move, does he need a hospital indemnity or something else to go with it? Love to see some thoughts in the chat from you all. Yep. And we're seeing something come in. There's, in the worst year, right? If he does all of a sudden come across a bad year, that break even point does not quite meet that 2950 HDG deductible. So unless he's pretty sure he's going to stay healthy next year, probably could make sense to look at the Plan G. But it's unlikely, and some of you saying they present the options to him here. 65 office visits, 26 ER visits, unlikely he'd go there. So it's possible that a Plan N could really be a good fit for him. But of course, as Juanita points out, our job is to advise, to present options, not to make the choice for him. But it's likely a Plan N could be a good fit for him as well. And Chelsea, that's an excellent point. Free look, depending on how much care you plan on using over those 30 days, could be a option here as well. Let's take a look at case number 2 here. In our last few moments, we'll look at Tiberius, and you're going to notice a theme across our names here. Tiberius is an 80-year-old male living in 48075 in Southfield. He is a smoker, though, which does impact his rates. He does live independently, so we should point that out. He's on both albuterol and Advair for asthma, but those are both regular treatments for asthma. The asthma is well controlled. No pending surgeries, no cancers, ER, or heart issues to be aware of either. He's currently on a BCBSM Plan G at $376.60 per month. Recently took an almost 20% increase, 19.8% increase. He too is living off his retirement and wants to preserve it. Show you the math here on the right. His current Plan G, like I said, his annual premium is $45.19.20. If we were to look for a Plan HDG deductible for him, $96.90 is his monthly premium at that rate. Well, annual premium is $1162.80. Savings over staying is $3556.40. His break-even point is pretty interesting, though. It's a negative $406.40, in part AV expenses. I'll share you that in just a moment. Plan N from Priority Health would come in at $307.88 for him. $36.94.56 for his annual premium savings of $824.64. So again, about 40 office visits or 16 ER visits would be his break-even point here. What's really interesting though, because these conditions are well controlled, if we get him through underwriting, even in the worst case scenario, he still saves money going to a high deductible G, right? His break-even point, his savings over staying is about $400 greater, right? Even if he hits the high deductible G, he's still coming out ahead on what he'd be paying on that Plan G premium. So in this case, I don't want to tip the scales too much in anyone's favor. And of course, you're going to present options to him, but I would love to hear where you'd lean for this guy here as well.
I mean, that is assuming he would pass underwriting. I mean, it's going to depend on the carrier at the end of the day, but yes.
Right. Right. It could be that HDG does make a lot of financial sense for him going forward, though admittedly, the HDG deductible going forward is relatively unpredictable at this point going forward. That $2,950 this year could be $2,800 next year, right? And that might change the calculus going forward. Kirk, so we've looked at James, we've looked at Tiberius. We'll close here with Kirk. He's a 68-year-old male, 48071, so lives in Madison Heights. He's a non-smoker. He does have did have prostate cancer, but it's been in remission for a year. He has been in the ER in the past 2 years as well, and no GI rights pending. Currently in a Priority Health Plan G, not a Pan G, for $231.06 per month, and just took, as you all know, a 28% increase on that Plan G. We'll show you the math in just a moment. He is still working, though, for an employer with 8 FTEs, so that's what required him to go on to Medicare and get that Med Sup. He is able to keep setting some funds aside here. Whether or not there's any new exposure you want to pay attention to is your call here. Again, on this Plan G, monthly premium of $231.06, annual premium of $27.72.72. If we looked at an HDG from Wellaby, his monthly premium goes to $60.01. Annual premium is $720.12. Savings over staying is $2,052.60. And so his break-even point is just that. Not quite the Part B deductible, or sorry, the HDG deductible, but still a little bit of premium savings if he's otherwise going to be healthy, although I don't know if he will based on his current history. Plan N would come in at $128.88. Annual premium $1,546.56. Savings is about $1,226 per year. And that's a break-even point of 61 office visits or 24 ER visits. Again, notwithstanding any possible excess charges that he may be responsible for. At this point, the math says that N could be a good choice for him, but I would caution you against making that switch, and that is because he had cancer here in the past year, has been in the ER in the past 2 years, which makes it entirely likely that he will not get through underwriting anywhere. But if he does stay out of the ER for the next year or so and continues to stay in remission for the next year, once you pass that two-year mark, underwriting for a lot of carriers does get a little bit looser. Right, so making a switch over to an HDG or an N could be possible or more palatable here for you as well. So for some closing thoughts, here is what we might suggest to you. It's a good idea to eat that renewal if there's nowhere else to go. If there's a condition prohibiting successful underwriting, will fall off in the future. Their anticipated utilization would take them past that break-even point, or if that client really just favors the premium certainty of knowing what they're going to pay up front and not have any out-of-pocket exposure on the back end. But it could be an idea to go shopping if the client can reasonably get through any underwriting. If the current carrier's rate history is more unfavorable than others, and maybe just a carrier switch in the same plan might be helpful as well. If their anticipated utilization would stay under the break-even point, good reason to consider switching. And again, if we're stacking an HDG with a hospital indemnity plan, that does introduce some more complexity, right? Because you have to file claims for a hospital indemnity plan. It doesn't get automatically reported. So if the client doesn't mind that additional exposure and some complexity to go along with it in exchange for savings, again, could be another reason to go shopping. We've also been hard at work putting together a discussion guide. If you'd like a discussion guide that kind of walks you through all these things, we call it right up here a shared decision-making guide. So it's something you can sit down with your client, have them across the table and walk them through the framework we just went through. We're happy to give that to you. Put your own branding on it. Just email Chelsea and I at learningatactionbenefits.com, and we're happy to put that together for you. You're always welcome to get a hold of us on LinkedIn at the Action Benefits Company. You can get directly to Chelsea and I at learningatactionbenefits.com or reach out to our main line 248-356-8585 and talk to anyone here at our office who will be happy to assist with whatever's on your mind. All that said, promised 45 minutes. I think we're actually at 47 minutes or so. So apologies and thank you for sticking with us here. First time running this session with you, so some kinks to work out. But hopefully we gave you some valuable knowledge here over the past 48 minutes together. Chelsea, before we say goodbye for the morning, what else might you add for the good of the order?
I just might remind everyone as well, if you are going to have these discussions, my natural thought when I think of what our agents and our clients are going to ask about once they get in front of us, they're probably going to ask about their PDP coverage as well. That would be my next step as a client. Make sure you either have a scope around or have a scope on file for that person for the next time that they for when they bring that up, so you can have those discussions with that person. Remember, with MedSup, you don't need one, but with PDPs, you do. Or if you're going to be someone going from Med Advantage to MedSup, that way, in case they want to talk about other Med Advantage options alongside the MedSup when you're doing this, keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Always a good idea to stay compliant, and always a good idea to ask folks who can help you stay compliant if you might need that help. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and attention here today. Thank you for the thank yous we're seeing here as well. We always love spending time with you all, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon at another Action Academy session. Please enjoy your days.